Welcome to another week of Women, Disasters, and Conflicts. This is a week where we're going to get to look at the unique challenges that the LGBTQ community faces during times of disaster. We'll be looking at the United States and a little bit around the world. And this would be a really interesting research paper topic for a lot of you. It's an area that it doesn't get enough attention, as do many of our areas that we study during this class. But it's very fascinating and it's definitely worthwhile. So this week there are a few slides and there's some areas that I want to briefly discuss. Um, the parts that you can't really read yourself and that you kind of need me to help you with. So we're going to do that right now. One of those areas is the theory of the charm circle. This is an older theory. It was created by Gayle Rubin, who is a cultural anthropologist. She's an academic who focuses on gay and lesbian studies, and she also does research on sexuality in general. A lot of her readings and researches, they're very fascinating, so you should definitely check her out. In the charm circle theory, which you'll see in your slides, this is a theory that's primarily based on the Western conceptions of sexuality, but it's fascinating to kind of think about worldwide if you want to put it in that kind of lens. She essentially asserts that we have two kind of views of sexuality. There's good sex and there's bad sex. And what I mean by that is that good sex is the sex that's sanctioned by our society. And the quote, good sex is located in the center of the circle. As you can see, it has different types of sexual content that are deemed maybe more traditional. Sex between married couples, heterosexual sex, etc. So that is the charm circle. The inside circle is what we know as the charmed circle. The other circle that is surrounding the charm circle, it's often called the outer limits. Not the TV show, it's another part of this theory. And the outer limits basically consist of sex that society either condemns or, doesn't view as the norm. And you can see that she mentions prostitution, sex outside of marriage, etc. It's really interesting to look at because this theory was created in the 1980s. And I think universally a lot of our ideas of sex have kind of maybe become more liberated, especially with the younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Xers and what have you. But the concept of do we still kind of believe there's good versus bad types of sex? And does that translate to do we believe that there are good versus bad types of people? Either way, do people get left outside of what we quote unquote call the normal? And I know at this point you're probably like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with emergency management and disaster recovery and so on and so forth? But it is important because we still have a problem with heteronormativity. Heteronormativity is believing that heterosexuality is the default sexuality, and kind of viewing the world in a lens of believing that, or essentially thinking that straight people are the norm, everything else is other. And so that's important because, as you read through your slides, you're going to read about cases of outright discriminations against the LGBTQ community. And those are really important to remember, but it's also important to remember that we sometimes fail to factor them in at all because we're looking at the world with this heteronormative lens, essentially. If we aren't thinking about, for instance, the fact that around 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ, then can we properly reach them when a disaster strikes? And it's all, a part of a goal of becoming more inclusive in disaster preparations and emergency management in general. That will be it for my very brief lecture so that I don't talk your ear off this week. But please feel free to let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Have a great week.